probably, how many here are familiar with Randy Reaver and Ruby Ridge, what took place there? Well, Randy, when that took place...
Hey, Pastor, get the microphone.
Yeah, all right.
Don't forget to mention that was innocent, found innocent, not guilty.
When that took place, when they went after Randy Weaver, folks, that was in the afternoon, 2 o'clock. People called me live. We had people there. For those of you that don't know, in Idaho, Randy Weaver was a fellow that, and I knew Randy very well. I still know him, he's still there. And he was a patriot, an ex-vet, and he was asked, former Green Beret, asked to infiltrate a church that's supposed to have been a white supremacist church. Well, it wasn't a white supremacist church. It was a white separatist church. Now, how many people here are separatists? You all ought to be. Because God's Word, the Bible says we're all to be separatists. Okay? And there's a big difference between a supremacist and a separatist. We're not supremacist. We're separatists. That means we come out of the world. We don't hold to the world's religion. Now, they asked him to go in because the government was supposedly, this church was supposedly be planning a war against the government. To go in and find out and then report back. So he did. And they weren't doing anything like they was told. He said that they were storing guns and ammunition. There wasn't any guns or ammunition. So he went back, he said, no, he said, I'm not going to do that anymore. Those people just want to be left alone. They have their beliefs and they're not trying to make war against the government. Anyhow, they said, yeah, you are, you're going back. You don't tell us, we tell you. He said, no, I'm not either. So what they did, they set him up. Randy would often make guns. He would build a gun for somebody, make a custom. And they sent a guy in there, yeah, you're right, several times. And to get Randy to make this guy a gun that was a shotgun, that the barrel was shorter than the long. Now, 1/4 of an inch. Randy agreed, 1/4 of an inch he went. That's all they needed. So they come after him. Because you don't leave them. And folks, what happened with Randy, they came up on his mountain. Him and his family, Vicky and Sammy, his son, lived up on them in a hired hand. Yeah, and the baby, 2 girls and a baby. Lived up on a mountain. They hunted. They lived off the game on the mountain. And Sammy was small for his age. He was, what was he, 12 years old or 14, but he was small. And he had a little dog. And one day he goes out and the little dog takes off like he always does after a deer, except for one deer. It was federal agents. And one of them, Juan Hiroshi, a cowardly. I would just hope I could run into him someday. Man, he was up there. And they shot little Sammy. They shot his arms right off. They shot him off at the elbow. Killed his dog first, and when they shot his dog, well, he fired on them. Then they shot his arms off. And then when they heard the gunfire, Vicky came to the doorway of the house, and she was holding her baby. And that cowardly Lon Hiroshi shot her right in the head. He was a sniper, shot her and killed her while she was holding her baby. No.
No weapon.
She had no weapon, no. And what happened was, I was on the radio, and there were people up on the side of the mountain called in live, and they were describing everything that was taking place. And Bo Greitz was there. Bo Greitz was a friend of mine, Colonel Greitz. I used to, in fact, I spoke 3 times in between him and Colonel Speed Wilson. How many of you are familiar with Colonel Speed Wilson? He just died here last year, the most highly decorated soldier in America, fought in 3 wars, Colonel Wilson. But anyhow, they were there on the mountain, and they confronted the federal marshals. And while this was going on, they tried to take a helicopter, and they had a tank of airplane fuel. They were going to dump it on the cabin with Randy, his 2 daughters, his dead wife, and the hired hand, and they were going to burn them like they did at Waco. They were going to burn them to death. And because we were talking about it live on the radio, and while they were out there, they got a call, the guy that was in charge, and it was told, there's a man in Cleveland on the radio telling the whole country what you're doing. You better stand down. And because of that, because we were on the radio talking about it, they didn't burn them to death, but they would have, okay? That happened. Now let me tell you what that was. All of these, what you were talking about, what happened with Randy Weaver, what happened at Waco, it's a test. They're testing you. They want to see how you're going to react. We have something up here, up where we're at in our neck of the woods, Northeast Ohio. We call it the For Real True Christian Resistance. The For Real True Christian Resistance. I don't think I sent you one of those forms, okay? Let me tell you what it is. It's simply this. We're courtroom observers, and for a 7-county area, we send out these forms that people will sign, and they say that, you know, the forms talk about being a real true Christian resistance, and I will come and I will show up and I will come to court. Now, we have had, because of this, when they come after one of our people, when they come after one of us up there, we all show up. I mean, we show up. And we'll pack that courthouse. And we'll be standing in the lobby out there. And we've had case after case after case thrown out. They've dismissed. Do you know why? Because we're there. Too many eyes, too many ears. They don't know who we are. If you had any idea of how many innocent people are in prisons today in Ohio, if you had any idea, you'd just be amazed how many. And I could tell you cases all day long where they dismissed the cases because we were there, just because we showed up. And you have to do that. You have to show up, every one of you. What we do is we have these forms that people fill out agreeing that I will, when they come for one of my brothers and sisters in Christ, I will show up. Now, what they've tried to do is they've tried to file charges against me. And they called a number of people that would show up as a courtroom observer. And they said, has Pastor Sanders asked you to come down and intimidate the judge or intimidate the court or the jury? And they couldn't find one person that would say that, because we tell them, you're there as courtroom observers. We're coming down just to let people know we're here, we're watching what you're doing. You see, I got to tell you, in Ohio, in your judicial system, guilt or innocence really means very little. It's getting a conviction. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. Yeah, that's right. You're guilty until you're proven innocent in the state of Ohio. Believe me. And that includes death row. We have the largest death row ministry in the state. I've been going to death row for over 40 years. I've sat right there with over 20 inmates that have been executed. And I've been their pastor, okay? So I know what's going on, and I know what's happening in those courtrooms, folks. And it's not good. But we have to show up. You really do. Each and every one of you. Is there any questions about any of that? You know, you're talking about Hillary. How many of you heard of Larry Nichols? Okay. How many of you heard of the Clinton Chronicles? Yeah, I was an advisor on the Clinton Chronicles. Now, the way that happened is one day I get a phone call, and it's this fellow on the phone, and he says, look, he says, you don't know me. He said, but I know everything about you. And I know you're not afraid to say what needs to be said. And I know you won't back down. Because we've always had one policy. No compromise, period. We don't start. He said, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. He said, you don't have to do it. He said, I'm going to send you some papers. And I want you to read it. And if I should turn up room temperature, I'd like to have you just go on the radio with this and read it over the air. I said, go ahead, send it to me, I'll look at it. So he sent it to me, and it was stuff all about the Clintons. And I thought, oh, come on, this is, you know, whoa, I can't believe all this. So I went to Arkansas, wanted to see for myself. I wasn't in Arkansas not even an hour. Checked into a hotel, went right across the street to one of those big 4-star restaurants, a nice place. And before I had done that, I'd called everybody that I'd had on the radio program. Judge Jim Johnson, the Supreme Court Justice down there, Larry Nichols, Gary Parks, whose father Jerry was murdered by the Clinton mob. And anyhow, I went over to the restaurant, and I was sitting there, and I was facing the wall. I had another pastor and a deacon with me, and all of a sudden those guys are going like this. And I said, "What's wrong with you two?" And the one said, "You got a great big ugly cop staring a hole through the top of your head." And just when that happened, you ought to have seen what happened in that place. Somebody yelled out, "Slick's boys have got some Yanks." Chairs were turned over, tables, people, the whole place cleared out. Even the maitre d' that was standing there, everybody was gone. And so I kept eating my meal. And so the one fella, Dale, says, "Doesn't that bother you knowing he's staring a hole to the top of your head?" And it was old green tooth. Folks, you had to see this guy. He was about as big as you, okay? And he had one green tooth right in the front, okay? And he had about a 3-day beard. I mean, this guy was, you know, you've heard 7 miles of bad highway. There you go. But anyhow, so I finished eating, and I looked up. He's still standing looking down at me. I just pushed my chair back and stood up. And I'm looking at him like, "Well, what are you going to do? Let's get it done." And he's looking around. And he's got this squirrely looking guy standing with him, this little short guy. And they're looking around and they got a confused look on their face. And I'm thinking, is this candid camera or something? You know, what's going on here? You know, and I didn't know. Well, so they just stood there. They were looking at each other, looked at me, and I just walked around them. Didn't really want to have to fight with him if I didn't have to. And that was the first one. After that, 14 other of Clinton's Dixie mobsters, you know, come after us. Everywhere we went, they would show up. And the last night I was there, they were outside my room all night long with shotguns and ball bats. They had one of them pickup trucks with high wheels on it. And in my room, you had a glass window would come down about that high. They'd run that truck up, and then they'd slam on the brakes, and they'd come the windows, the lights right up to the window. They did that all night long. All night long, you know. But anyhow, I found out later on why they didn't kill me. Because they did kill another radio talk show host right down the street in that same town. It was because they couldn't understand why I wasn't afraid of them. They thought because I wasn't afraid of them, I was a part of a sting operation. And they were confused. Yeah, they were confused. I tell you, I was confused too. And I went over to Larry Nichols' house. And Larry was the real strategist with the Clinton mob. He was the real strategist. They put Dickie Morris out front for public consumption. Larry Nichols was in the background. You talk about voter fraud? I went up into Larry's attic. The whole attic was filled with ballots of Clinton's opponent. All the ballots that they voted, they took, and he just filled his attic with them. I mean, these folks were, you talk about voter fraud, and that's what we're going to see this year. Okay? And so, anyhow, that's what's out there. That's the reality of what's taking place. We're in for a real exciting summer. And in Cleveland, they had the first Republican debate in Cleveland. And I went down there. Now, you were right there, okay? You were down there. And they have these Black Lives Matter. And I mean Black Lives Matter. These people are communists. That's all they are, communists. They're hardcore, paid. The renter riots. And we were there. I was there to protest Governor Kasich. Because Mr. Kasich, who I helped get elected, ran as a conservative, turned into a flaming liberal. And he betrayed all of us, okay? Yep. And so, and he used my radio program to get elected. And folks, I've got a good memory. But I was down there to protest him. I had about, what do we have, 20 people with us? About 20 people. Because Kasich has kept us from passing the heartbeat bill for the last 5 years. That's 20,000 babies a year have died because of Mr. Casey. I was on the board of Ohio Right to Life for 21 years. They're no longer Ohio Right to Life. Do not give them a dime. Do not give them a dime. They're Ohio Right to Regulate. If they sided with Planned Parenthood, they sided with Planned, don't give them 10 cents. They're not with us. They left us. They've been infiltrated. They've been compromised. I know, I was on that board for 21 years. Pardon? Yeah, oh, Larry Alpoff. He is a bad one. I mean, that guy. How many know Jan Porter? I got Jan started in the pro-life movement. Anyhow, what they did to that poor girl was unbelievable, what they did to her. And, folks, we only have maybe 1 or 2 conservative Ohio senators left. We really have a battle. We've got to take our country back. We really do have to take our country back. And so, anyhow, I just thought I'd have to do it. Any questions on any of that? About what is going on up there today? Brian?
I had more to say with those guys right there. I don't have any questions. No,
Okay.
I agree with everything you're talking about.
Brother?
I forgot, who were the 2 kids, what were, you know the 2 kids' name that were going up the highway that started it all in Arkansas?
Okay, you're talking about the boys over at Mina?
Yeah.
Okay, on the railroad tracks? I had their mothers on the radio program, okay? These boys were amazing, folks, because what they did before they laid down on the railroad tracks to commit suicide, they tied their hands behind their backs and they put bags over their head. In other words, these boys were murdered. And that was all had to do because they happened to be at the wrong place at the right time. They were running drugs in there, in the nose cones of these planes, and they were dropping suitcases full of cash, money. And these 2 boys just happened to be there and see it. And they went over and they got the cash. Well, Clinton's Dixie mob caught up with the boys. They sodomized them, and then they murdered them. Okay? But you don't hear about that. How many of you have ever heard about any of that? Okay? You know, we have the Clinton Chronicles. You really need to see the Clinton Chronicles. If you haven't, it'll give you a real education of what took place there. But I just wanted to say, all of these things that are happening, they're a test, and the test is to see how we are going to respond. And I encourage you to do that here, the For Real True Christian Resistance. Get these forms, get everybody's names, have folders. We have folders for every county. When they come after one of our people, believe me, we all show up. And I can tell you, if they've thrown case out of court where they've come after innocent people, you know, we're there as courtroom observers. We're not there to try to intimidate the court. We just want honesty, we want the truth. And we're tired. We're tired of a corrupt judicial system putting our people in jail. How many of you think that Christians are second-class citizens? They're being treated as such. That's what they think. Saturday we had a protest out at the Target store there in Parma. And I was asked to be one of the speakers. And I said something that was just absolutely brilliant. I'm going to tell you, this was far above the ability of any of those on the left to embrace or comprehend. You ready? Here's what it is. Women make the best women. There's no liberal that can comprehend that. Anyhow, what the Target was sending a message to us that, you know, you Christians don't matter. You know, it doesn't really matter if we offend you. We don't care. Well, they care $10 billion worth right now because we're protesting. But we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. You've got to stand. You've got to stand. It's now or never. It's no more time. You have to get involved. Faith without works is?
Dead.
Be you a doer of the word, not a hearer, only deceiving.
So,
Okay. See, I'm caught in kind of like a controversy thing here because I've decided, you know, I'm not really that was sold on Donald Trump yet. I'm taking a wait and see, but I'm definitely sold on Hillary. I know I'm going to do everything that I can to stop here. But here's my dilemma too, folks. My name is Ernie Sanders. That's my name.
He did a couple places, right? He said, no, it wasn't Bernie Sanders, was it?
There at the church in Cortland where I pastor, they have a sign, Pastor Ernie. Well, some smart aleck keeps putting a B in front of my name, okay? I call it the bad B, okay? They keep changing me into Bernie Sanders. Now I'm getting mail with Bernie Sanders on it. So we've been trying to get him on the radio program, but he's dodging me. I'd love to get him in a debate. We did a parody. We did a parody about Bernie Sanders. And it was funny. It was like, the host would say, well, it was called Blarney Sanders, okay, because, you know, you got things you can only, some things you can't do on the radio. And he said, Blarney Sanders, the host, I understand that you said that you would not send any more of our men out to war for any reason. Yes, that's true. Well, then how do you expect to defend the country? Isn't the first job of the president to defend the country? How can you do that if you're not willing to send our young men to war? Well, we'll send the women. That's what they mean to do, folks, to send our young girls to go out and fight against men.
yeah, the Sodom.
The other one we had was, well, Bernie, how would you like it? How would you like it if Hillary came into the bathroom when you were in there? Well, that actually happened. What do you mean it happened? Well, she came in. What did you do? Well, she said, show me yours and I'll show you mine. What? What did you do? I took out my teeth and I showed her. And then she took out her teeth and she showed me. Well, then what did you do? I laughed. It was getting too personal then. But I still can't get Bernie on the air. But anyhow, I just thought we had to do some comments. So, Brian, you ready?
Beautiful.
Do you want to come up again? No? All right. If any other questions, just ask me, folks. We'll be around a while. There you go, my friend.
I just wanted to